whole poem is about freedom and restriction. Okay, he is restricted by the collar, which is a symbol of the priesthood, and he is debating with himself why he should remain in such constraints when he could denounce the priesthood and gain his freedom. So that is what the whole poem is about. What is difficult, though, is you have to refer to diction, imagery, and form. That is difficult. Now, write a note here. Write a note somewhere. They ask you often about structure or form. Okay, let me just admit Kia. Okay, hello Kia. Now that Kia is here, I can let you know without embarrassing her. It was Kia that wrote a brilliant poetry essay on the collar. Okay, now make a note. When they ask you form and structure, they always give a mark for enjambment, always. So if they're asking you the structure or the form, they're asking you basically how it has been written. So if it is that poem in the artist's studio, that is a sonnet. So you'd need to say it is a sonnet. Other poems, for example, the poem about Heidelberg, that uses enjambment. Enjambment simply means run on lines. They always give marks for enjambment. Okay, right, so let's go back. Diction is word choice. Now, I have taught you with diction, you have to say, quote, quote, quote. Diction means quote, and I've told you that forget the word diction, it must become one word, diction quote, diction quote. In your language paper, they're going to ask diction, you quote. In your literature paper, they're going to ask diction, you quote. Okay, diction means choice of words. There are many words in the poem that have to do with freedom and restriction. Okay, imagery, figures of speech. Okay, you can't say at grade 12 he uses lots of metaphors. That is 0 marks. Quote them. You just have to say he uses the metaphor in, and you quote the metaphor. He uses words that are associated with freedom, and you quote the word. You can't just say he uses lots of images. 0, quote them. Okay, right. Now, it should be 250 to 300 words, about 1 page. Sometimes people write a little bit more than 1 page, which is fine. It's really fine. As long as you do the diction, word choice, imagery, figures of speech, form, structure. Okay, right. This is the memo. You didn't have to do this, but this is a suggestion. Okay, the poet laments the restrictions of living his pious, holy life and vows to break free of his yoke, his collar. Notice how the quotes are used in the flow of the sentence. Imprisonment is symbolized by words such as rope, cage, cable. Okay, speaker is done wasting his time with what is holy, proper, or good. It is his goal to leave the cage and rope of sand, which he himself has created. The title has connotations of submission, imprisonment, and control, but also the piece of clothing worn by the member of the clergy. So the collar, just the same way that it traps a dog, it traps a priest. He sees a future in which his life is loose and resembles the wind. Here we have the freedom. He feels there should be no restraints on what he's allowed to do or say. He highlights his restrictions as a virtuous man by means of an image of harvesting. You don't have to get this one. That was a difficult one. Look here, this metaphor shows a harvester working hard, but getting nothing valuable in return except for injury. Can you see that? Metaphor, quote. Diction, quote. Okay, the declaration, I will abroad, is repeated to indicate the speaker's desire to move away from his entrapment. And now, in the last 3 points, we go to the form or the structure. The loose rhyme scheme and the frequent questions reflect the speaker's confusion about the rewards of living a restrained life. Absence of stanzas indicates the speaker's thoughts are not organized. His tirade, his ranting and raving is with emotion rather than reason. And then right at the end, God calls him and he responds. He's reminded that God is patient, and then he sees his collar as a guide rather than a burden. Okay, I just want to quickly summarize for you, for those of you who found this poem difficult. It's very difficult. It's his head and his heart, his emotions and his reason, and they're debating. You've all been through that. Should I do this? No, I shouldn't. I've got a maths test tomorrow. Oh, but gee, I so badly want to go to that party. Your emotions are arguing with your logic. His logic is saying, no, stay. His emotions are saying, no, I've got to get away. I can't be imprisoned. I can't do this anymore. Any questions on the poem? Any questions so far? Do you understand that I'm going back to number 1? It says, freedom and restriction, that's easy. You can cope with this. But diction, quote, imagery, figures of speech, form, structure. Whenever, remember this and write it down, whenever there's no rigid rhyme scheme, it can suggest confusion or disorganization. When it's run on lines, it is conversational tone. Did you get that? Okay, should I repeat it? Okay, right. When there's no set rhyme scheme, it shows confusion, disorganization. Okay, and by contrast, a rigid rhyme scheme shows structure, organization. All right, and then run on lines suggests a conversational tone. Okay, so you found with the collar. Right, let's go to the next one. The next one was in an artist's studio. Now, grade 12s, I cannot stress enough connotation, connotation, connotation. For those of you who are not sure what connotation means, it just means what the words suggest. Okay, now, I can't predict what questions are going to come up. I cover these poems in your notes, in your lessons, in great detail. Most of what I cover comes up. But when something comes up that I haven't done, you've got to think. Okay, now, connotation, connotation. Now, some of you got this nicely. Sits or walks or leans. What is the effect of the word? She's moving. That's it, she's moving. It's showing movement. Okay, we'll see the memo. It says she's restless, but it just shows movement. But that's for 2 marks. So you have to say, basically, it's the same woman, but she's moving into different positions. There's your 2 marks. Sits, walks, or leans. Different positions, but same woman. Okay, and there are your 2 marks. You've got to think. Okay, now next one. Account for the speaker stating that all the portraits have the same one meaning. Now you know what this is. The same one meaning is he is obsessed with her. He's trying to capture her beauty. He's trying to capture every aspect of her. Okay, but each one is different. So this, you have to say, because it's for 2 marks, you have to say the same one meaning. He's trying to capture her beauty. He's trying to capture her essence, her spirit in different forms. But it's still the same woman. Did you get that? Right. The significance of the repetition. Now, repetition is emphasis, always. Write that down. Repetition is emphasizing, but you've got to find what is being emphasized. Look what it says. Not as she is. Oh, sorry. Not with sorrow dim. Not as she is, but was when hope shone bright. Not as she is. Look at that. Not as she is. Not as she is. Don't tell me it's emphasizing that it's not as she is. Hey, you tell me in your own words. You tell me it's emphasizing that the artist is painting her not in truth. And then you can quote, not as she is today, but how she was in the past. And then that's your 3 marks, so it's loaded. So you've got to say a bit more about that. So you've got to say, the woman has changed. Obviously, she's aged, but she had big impact on him in days gone by. And that is what he's still trying to capture. Can you see that? Give me a thumbs up if you can see that. Are there no thumbs ups? Are you awake? Great. Thanks, Al-Qaeda. Okay, right. So, repetition. You just say, not, he is repeating not as she is. What does that mean? It means not the truth of who she is today, but rather who she was in the past. So we got to say for 3 marks, the poet is recreating the woman as she was in the past because she had great impact on him, and he's trying to recapture that in the paintings. And then the final one. This poem can be interpreted as a protest poem about gender and power. Critically discuss the validity of this statement with close reference to the poem. Now, Grade 12s, I never saw this poem as this. I must say, I really didn't. But when I read the memo and saw what she said, yes, it's valid, but you didn't have to say that it is. I had one student who said, actually, no, it's not. It's not protest. It's an expression of a man and a moment in his past that had great meaning for him. This is not about protest. This is about capturing female beauty and female impact. So you don't have to agree when it says discuss the, it can be interpreted as a protest poem. Some of you said yes, all right. Once you looked at it, you thought, yeah, maybe this is, but you don't have to say it is. You can say, actually, no, it's not. All right, let's go, and then we'll skim through the memo answers. Okay. The first one, the contrasting words create a playful or restless mood of someone who cannot settle. You didn't have to have that. That's just a suggested answer. If you said, okay, it creates the sense of movement of the model in the different positions, you got your mark. These words indicate that the artist uses one model, but her pose is different. Yet all the portraits are somehow the same. Why are they the same? Because it's her. Okay. Number 2, the artist range is limited. Why? Because it's just the same woman. But he's trying to capture that beauty, and he wants to interpret it and present it. The significance of the repetition, okay? Not emphasizes that the woman in the portrait has been created to fill the dreams, how he sees her and how he wants to portray her. Okay, it is the image and recreation, not the actual woman. A work of art says more about the ideas and impressions of the artist than about the woman who has been painted. Okay, so I'm sure you understand that now. It's not as she is, it's him as he is recreating her. And then the final one. This is a valid statement. Look what it says here at the bottom. Accept other relevant answers. 4 marks for 3 succinct points or 2 well-explained points. This statement is valid. The role of men as the active masters. He feeds upon her face. Some of you said, no, this is a man who is enthralled by the beauty of the woman, and he feeds upon her face. because she created such a sense of hope and a vision of idealism for him. Okay, so you didn't have to say that this is a man controlling a woman. Rossetti questions how women are used to fill dreams and are not reflected for who they really are. This poem explores the relationship between the male artist and the female subject, but also criticizes the practice of using the female form as a neutral and impersonal impression. In the final lines, the speaker reminds the reader that what we see is not always fair. Okay, so that is valid, okay? The man is in control, the man is in power, he is manipulating how the woman sits and stands and leans, and she fills his dreams, not as she truly is, but as he interprets her. Does that make sense? Okay, right. The next poem, a lot of you did that one. Okay, now, this poem is the Weather Eye. Okay, now, Weather Eye is not on the internet. It's a completely modern poem. All right, no critics have written anything about it. So I analyzed this poem 100%, okay, with no input, which means that whatever you say and it is valid and you substantiate, you're going to get the marks. Do you understand? Because you're not in competition with any great poetry writer. All right, so I did this as best that I could, and there was enough information that I did for you to answer all of these. All right, but again, I emphasize, you have to think. Okay, explain what the word wake conveys about the temperature. It's very hot. Now, if you say it's very hot, it's 1 mark. Okay, it wakes you. Why? Because it's too hot to sleep. It's too uncomfortable to sleep. There we go. There's your 2 marks. What impression of the speaker is created by using personification in and the house undressed? Now, I know that you know what personification is. All right, but remember I taught you with a simile and a metaphor, you say just as, so too. I want you to do this with personification as well. So what you would say here is, just as a person would undress because it's too hot, so too is the house undressed by opening the shutters, opening the curtains, opening the windows. Have you got that? It's kind of like the house was dressed like a human being. That's what you had to say. The house was dressed like a human being. And just as a human being would take off its clothes because it's so hot, so too do they undress the house by opening the shutters, opening the windows. All right, discuss the significance of the use of the second person pronoun you throughout the poem. Okay, you did this nicely. You is talking to us, the reader. That means, and write this down and learn at grade 12s, the poet engages the reader. Engages, it's the same as a rhetorical question. When they ask a rhetorical question in the language, it's to engage the reader. So when he's talking to you, it draws us into the poem and it engages us. Okay, one of you wrote, which was fantastic, that it wasn't for the woman as she is now, it was for her as the child that she was. That was great. So she's like talking to herself when she was a child. Okay, 3.4. These lines indicate that something is absent from the speaker's current life. Do you agree with this statement? Now, most of you said yes, but you didn't get 3 out of 3 because justify your response means quote, 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 quote. I cannot emphasize enough, quote. Okay, if a question is worth 3 marks or more grade 12s, you have to quote. Okay, right. So obviously something's missing. And what is missing? You can quote anything from the poem. Some of you spoke about these chill machines that don't work half as well. Or you spoke about the order and the structure in her life when she was a child, where everything was measured by the sky, and she doesn't have that where she is. 3 marks, quote. Okay, let's look at the model answers. Right, first of all, what does the weight convey about the temperature? As the morning progresses, it's becoming hotter, it's uncomfortable, can't sleep. The personification. As the shutters are removed, when the heat lowers or subsides, the house is undressed, giving the house human qualities as the family prepares for the night. The personification makes the house seem like a family member that is cared for and loved. Did you get that? That is how personification works. Just think of, just as a person would get undressed, so too would they undress the house. The significance of the second person you address the reader directly and contribute to the sensory experience of the reader, which allows him and her to be present in the poem. You don't have to have that. You can just say it's addressing the reader directly, okay? And it engages us, it draws us into the poem. And then the use of you provides a distance between the adult poet and her childhood self. The speaker of the poem contributes to the idea that the speaker has something missing from her current life and longs for her childhood when the world was ordered. You don't have to say that, okay? There are lots of things that you can say. All right. Sorry, I just want to look at. I have to take register. Listen, we're contacting all your parents, and I'm talking to the wrong people because you all here. Okay. All right. But you must go to all your lessons, all right? All your lessons tomorrow, because we are contacting all your parents if you're not there. Okay, now, the next one, this poem was the To My Father Who Died. Now, this poem as well, it's very, very modern. No notes on the internet. So this poem as well, you are allowed to interpret it, okay? Because you are the one who, you're allowed to, as long as you validate it, as long as you back up what you're saying. Right, describe the events revealed in this poem. Now, you must get 2 out of 2 for that, grade 12s. It's just the poet, the speaker, goes down to the sea. Her father has died. She's looking out at the ocean and trying to make sense of, trying to understand the relationship that she had for him. Okay, now when I read number 4.2, I got very scared, because even though I have mentioned this in poems, I never mentioned it in this poem. So I got nervous, but surprisingly a lot of you got this. So you remembered it from other poems that I've done. Apostrophes when you speak directly to a concept. Okay, so it's not just the apostrophe. Apostrophe means 2 things. It's the apostrophe with the punctuation mark, but also apostrophes when you talk directly to something or someone. Okay, my face-to-face students, we learned about it when you did Death Be Not Proud, but that was in grade 10. Okay, and then I also mentioned it, I don't remember which poem, but apostrophe, you talking directly to a concept. So what is it, why is this good in the poem? The effect of, she's talking directly to her father and trying to bridge the gap, trying to fix the relationship or understand the relationship that they had when he was alive. She didn't have a good relationship with him, and it's hurt her. forever. And he's died, and she can't go back and talk to him. And she's going to try for the rest of her life to understand the breakdown in their relationship. And so she's talking directly to him. Then 17 to 18, and I've put the words here. See, child, washed up like diviners' shells and other flotsam fragments on your shores. Comment on the significance of the speaker's description of herself. Now, there is so much in here you can say. You can say she's a sea child because her father was the sailor. You could say that she sees herself as either the shells, and flotsam is bits of wood, bits of broken debris, fragments of waste that are washed up on the shore. So she doesn't have a very high opinion of herself. She just washed up there. You know, there was no celebration, no great announcement. She just washed up. So she sees herself as not having much value in the eyes of her father. And I'm sure there's some of you that think like this as well. Relationships with parents are extremely complex. Extremely complex. And you, I'm sure, no doubt, can identify with this, with either your mother or your father. And you will also try and make sense of your relationships with them for the rest of your life. And then your children will do the same. Okay, so it's one of the intergenerational things that happen. So I love this poem. It's beautiful. Right, discuss the effectiveness of the final line. She sees only the view. Okay, her father, for her father, the sea was holy. He meditated. He knew where the fish were. He understood the interface where the fish came out of the water. He saw only the sea and not the view. She sees only the view. What does that mean? There's no connection. Even after he has died, she doesn't understand him. Okay? And there's no meaningful connection between her and her father. Okay, this is the memo. The speaker visits a beach. She visited often with her father, reflects on the sea. She hopes to remember and share what it means to her father. Okay, apostrophe. The speaker is able to express her feeling towards her father and also provides a vehicle for the speaker to express what she could say to her father when he was alive. Okay, then the sea child. Now, what is written here, you don't have to say, but it is an option. The image suggests neglect, or that's what I said, a lack of connection between the speaker and her father. The child is washed up. She's lost her appeal and therefore not worthy of attention. It's kind of like she just floated onto the sea. Once the valuable minerals have been extracted, all that remains for a diviner are shells and other flotsam fragments, which create an impression of isolation, neglect in the relationship between the speaker and her father. Okay, so that's exactly what I said. The relationship is not a good one. She feels lonely, she feels isolated, she feels lack of connection with her father. And she just kind of, one minute she wasn't there, the next minute she just washed up like with debris and bits of broken, abandoned wood. All right, and then the final line. It effectively illustrates the speaker's lack of connection with her father. She was hoping to understand what moved her father. So she visits a place that they visited together in the past, hoping to see more than just the view. The finality of the short sentence highlights her loneliness, her disillusionment, her sadness. And there's another "de" word. Remember, you cannot go into a literature paper without knowing the following words, and please write them down, particularly the online students, because I've really pushed with my face-to-face. You have to know and write them down. The D words: despair, disillusionment, desolation, desperation, disappointment, despondent, detached, detached. If there are only three that you can learn, the three main ones are despair, disillusioned, and desolation. Desolation. You often get those kinds of questions in your unseen poem where you need those words. Right, and then I've taken 2 poems from the June exams. Are you all okay so far, grade 12s? Am I going too fast or am I going okay? Okay, they're fine, all okay. Right. Now, I just want to make a comment. Most of you don't write enough in your exams. If a question is out of 2 marks, you've got to write 4 lines. If a question is out of 3 marks, you've got to write 6 lines. When you come out of an English exam, your hand must be bleeding. You've written so much. That's how you score marks. Okay, right, so I've gone to Weary Blues. And this poem, more than any other poem, shows the importance of connotation. Just saying in other words, the title of the poem is Weary Blues. How does this create an expectation? Now we think connotation. What is the connotation of weary? Weary means tired, despair, disillusionment, disappointment, and here are all your D words. What does blues suggest? Blues is sadness, despair, tiredness. When you have Monday blues, that's what it is. So the title refers to blues, so the reader is prepared for a sad poem. Weary highlights the extent ongoing tiredness. Okay, then, by the pale, dull pallor of an old gas light. Suggest how the adjectives in this line contribute to the mood. Now the mood is the feeling, the atmosphere, and here again, all you have to do is think connotation. What does pale mean? Not bright. What does dull mean? No life, no energy. What does old mean? Lost its spark. And there you have your answer. There's your answer. What does dull mean? No energy, no light. Okay, what does pale mean? If you say someone's pale, they're sick. Okay, dull and old connotes or have the connotation, something that is lifeless, broken, contributes to the misery, the depression in the poem. And there you got the D word again. Right. He made that old piano moan with melody. Comment on the effect of the image. Okay, now, you could say poor piano alliteration and then connotation. Okay, you could say personification because the piano is moaning. And now we think connotation. Poor, pitiful, moan, sadness, dissatisfaction, weariness. And because it's for 3 marks, we quote. So, a moan, a signal of reluctance, tiredness. The piano has to express a similar sad, melancholic emotion, as it has to play a depressing tune. Transferring the moan to the piano extends the sadness as he builds the blues he plays. Can you see, grade 12s? I wanted to emphasize for you how connotation works. When you moan, you're dissatisfied, you're unhappy. All right, next one. He slept like a rock or a man that's dead. Why is this ambiguous? When you sleep like a rock, you like really, really sleep well. Or when you sleep like a man that's dead, you also, well, we think, sleep really, really well. But a man that's dead suggests figuratively. His spirit is dead. All right? Implied in the statement of whether the singer has resolved. Now, I taught you that he did use the music to resolve his sadness, and that allowed him to sleep like a rock. So he slept very well because his music is so healing for him. Okay, he sings, he doesn't turn to drugs, he doesn't turn to crime. His music heals him and it restores him. Do you understand? And that allows him to sleep like a rock. Or you could say his spirit is dead. Even though he sings and it gives him meaning and purpose as he's singing, his spirit is dead. Therefore, there's no resolution. Okay, now I taught you there was resolution. All right, but the ambiguity could be no resolution because he's not literally dead, he is figuratively, spiritually dead. And always, they say, accept other relevant answers to well-explained points for full marks. Okay, you can say anything, but substantiate, prove what you're saying, and then you definitely will get your marks. And then I did The Childhood in Heidelberg, simply also because I absolutely love this poem. And I know it's one of the favorite poems of my face-to-face students. Let's hope it comes up in the finals, hey? Okay, ancestors. Ancestors, obviously, there's a spirituality. It refers to the African cultural heritage of spirituality. But it could also suggest that that family has lived in that house for years and years. Okay, so there's a long history with the house, and that makes it even more tragic that they are forced to move out. Okay, accounts for the sudden change in tense. Okay, now you've got to know this. If this comes up in the finals, this question is going to come up. Present tense, he uses the present tense to describe from the child's perspective. In other words, he's there. He's back as a child. He's living through it. It's the present. But the past tense shows that these are memories from an adult perspective, once the adult understands what has happened. So with the child, there is enthusiasm, excitement, joy, but lack of understanding. The child doesn't understand what's going on. And it becomes poignant, P-O-I-G-N-A-N-T. That means so tragically sad that as an adult, he looks back and realizes that everything that the poem meant, he didn't understand the truth of what was going on, that it was a forced removal, that they were forced to live under the regime of apartheid. So that's why the tense changes. Present tense, the child. Okay. Past tense, the adult, giving perspective and showing awareness and understanding. Then, lines 31 to 32, the effectiveness of the image. Okay, this will also come up in your finals. It's a lovely question. It was the tombstone matchbox houses. Now, matchbox houses, they're small. They all look the same. Tombstone, death. There you got your answer. Now you develop an answer around that connotation. So the houses look all the same. They lack any personal individual quality. The houses are compared to tombstones, which links the family's forced move to death. The place and relocation is the death of the speaker's innocence. It's the death of the childhood, the death of the family's lifestyle, the death of their culture. Okay, got that. Tombstone, death, death of so many things, death of innocence, death of culture, death of hope, death of enthusiasm for the future, death of the family's old lifestyle, matchbox, small, cramped, all the same, lack of individuality. All right. And then the final question, the poem is comment on the injustice of apartheid, 3 marks. You have to quote. 3 marks you quote, don't forget. This is a valid statement. There is no specific mention of apartheid or even of forced removals, and there's that word poignant, yet it is a poignant reminder of the injustices of the time through clever use of imagery. The speaker describes being yanked, pulled out of the safety of the womb where his ancestors had lived before him, and now he and his family are moved to matchbox houses, which seem like tombstones to the speaker. Political forced removals have displaced the family into a harsh and unsavory area. But there are other things you could have said. Remember, he woke every morning to a man with a hole in his head next door to where he lived. So that is an indication of the violence. Also the fact that the mother had the Dover stove, which used coal. So there was no electricity. Okay, I could actually have done more. I finished fast, but I didn't think I would finish so quickly. All right, grade 12s. I'm sure there's a question somewhere. Is there a question? Is there a question somewhere? You can write it, you can type it, or ask me. No questions. I'd like to see thumbs up. Has this helped? Al-Qaeda, the papers are marked and they're on the platform. Okay, so I've marked everything. You can actually go and check it. Okay, any other questions? But most of you need to learn your poetry harder. Most of you need to, and that's why I wanted to do this. Karabo, has this helped you? I know you wanted help with the poetry essay, poetry questions. Has this great? Great. Okay, before your final exams, maybe even next Monday when we have our online lesson, I'll do the other 6 poems. And then we've done full-on revision for the poetry, for the exams. If you just learn the poems, and I mean, you get 4 out of the 12. So I mean, you can certainly, there's one or two of the poems that I've done today that are probably going to be in your finals. All right. So put in the effort and learn them. I think our next, I've forgotten, our next lesson, I think it's on Thursday, we're doing literary essays. So please be in the lesson, because it's very easy to predict what will come up in your final exams. With Pygmalion, it's just transformation. And with Patson and Diamond Boy, it's just his journey. So it's easy to predict what's going to come up. So be in the lesson. William, you just need to go to what is it? Where the assessments are uploaded. If you go to where the assessments are uploaded, you'll find them there. Okay, William, your essay was absolutely beautiful. I loved it. So thank you for your effort. Thank you for doing that. Most of you wrote really nice essays. Next Monday, Al-Qaeda, this week is the crash courses. Please go to every single class. We're doing stuff that's going to come up in your final exam. So it's actually helping you with revision. So don't bunk the classes. All right, and the ones that you must particularly be in are the maths Maths and Maths Lit. Don't bunk them. I know it's hard, but be there. All right. Okay. Well, I finished 10 minutes early, but I'm sure you're pleased about that, hey? All right, my dear grade 12s, I will see you on Thursday. Are the journey, the literal and the figurative journey. And the other thing, what came up here, Michael Williams contrasts a bleak and cruel world with the restorative power of love and family. That also encompasses the journey, because Patson moves to Morang because he has to become the diamond miner. It is there that he finds and comes up against the corruption and the greed. It is there that he experiences the rejection of his uncle James Banda and the disloyalty of his stepmother. Remember, she stays in the house while the rest of the family have to go and stay in the tobacco shed. She absolutely betrays the family when she joins up with Commander Jesus. So it is there that Patson realizes how cruel and bleak and harsh the world is. Then, of course, when his sister is kidnapped by Determined, she's kidnapped basically into human trafficking. And Patson has to cover the journey from Morang, through Beitbridge, through to Johannesburg, and from Johannesburg. It's fine, Gugu, it's fine. I am recording, so you can watch this at a later stage. Or if you want me to redo the lesson, I'll redo the lesson before your final exams. Okay, so that is basically the journey. He ends up in Cape Town, and it is there that he realizes that what is important in life is love, family, loyalty, commitment, family intimacy, family protection. That is what counts more than having the diamonds. So what I've just said encompasses both the journey and this contrast between the bleak and cruel world and the restorative power of love and family. Okay, now, what I also noticed in your literary essay is your structure is not as it should be. Okay, now, in your introduction, you have to rewrite the topic in your own words and make a stand. Make a stand means you agree or you disagree, but you don't have to say I agree or disagree. You can just say, as we've seen here, in the novel Diamond Boy, the author, Michael Williams, conveys how cruel, oopsie, sorry, I made a mistake here, how cruel and harsh the world can be. He also shows the love and healing powers of family. I'm sorry about that I made such a silly mistake here and I didn't fix it. But it should be conveys how cruel and harsh the world can be. Okay? So what I've done here is I've basically rewritten the introduction, but I've used my own words. So instead of bleak and cruel, I've used cruel and harsh. And instead of restorative power, I've written about the love and healing powers of family. Okay, so just change it. It's basically paraphrasing the topic. All right, so what I've done here in the introduction is I've kind of outlined what my essay is going to be about. Then I've done 3 X's. These are for paragraphs. You don't have to do 3 paragraphs. Possibly it is going to be more. You might have 4 to 5 paragraphs. You must aim for 2 pages. Anything less than that shows that you've not fully analyzed the topic completely. Okay, so you write your paragraphs, and in one of the lessons I suggested the peel approach. Peel is your point, which is your topic sentence per paragraph. Then your evidence from the novel. Then explain that evidence, and then link back to topic. So your final point would be, this shows, or this conveys, or this suggests how bleak the world can be, how bleak it is in Zimbabwe. So your first paragraph after your introduction could be something about the harshness in Marang, the greed, the corruption, the disregard from James Banda, how they pushed to live in the tobacco shed, and Patton starts to learn that the world is not loving and kind. In your conclusion, you have to link back to the topic. So your introduction and your conclusion are both paraphrasing or saying the topic in other words. So here I've gone back to the intro. Michael Williams, who is the writer, portrays how a loving family can heal and provide love in a bleak, corrupt world. He shows how loyalty and care are more powerful than diamonds in living a happy, contented life. Okay, that is a well-structured essay. And just as I suggested yesterday, okay, write in short sentences and punctuate correctly. If you can't write long sentences fluently, don't even try. Just write in short sentences. Put your full stops, put your capital letters. Okay, right, so that is the structure of your literary essay. I'm going to go through, this is what was included in the memo. And you will see here that it's everything that follows the memo of the journey as well. Remember the journey from, the literal journey from Zimbabwe to South Africa, but the figurative journey, how Patson develops and grows, matures into an adult who realizes what is important and also takes responsibility for his sister. So you'll see these points are the same. Okay, so it basically makes sense to learn these points. Go into your exam having about 10 points at your fingertips so that whatever essay topic comes up, you can cope with it. Right, let's read. Zimbabwe is described as cruel and bleak. The country is impoverished and neglected, so greed and corruption follows. Marang is described as dangerous from the beginning. The driver abandons the Moyo family and they have to make it to the center on foot. Many people are caught up in what seems to be a hopeless life of grind and toil. The Diamond Rush miners exemplify these people. They are impoverished and deprived. Now, this asks an important question, and I've brought this up in one of our lessons before. When people are impoverished, it seems that they lend and lean towards corruption. Is it their fault, or has society been structured in such a way that corruption and greed follow? Okay, it's an important question. It's not, you're not going to have to answer that in your exam, but it's something I want you to think about. When people become self-centered in their pursuit of diamonds, is it necessarily an immorality, and is it necessarily their own fault? Obviously, when we think of James Banda, he's just plain greedy. But what about people who are absolutely impoverished and don't know where their next meal is coming from? Is it a product of society, or is it their own immorality? Okay, just something for you to think about. Right, the Moyo family is evicted, kicked out from the farmhouse, and must live in a shack at the back of the house. Despite the new domestic hardships, the Moyo family has a close bond. There is a shared happiness without Sylvia. Patson and his father work hard in the mines under difficult conditions. Mugabe soldiers take over the mine and the boys are taken into custody. They're forced to work for Commander Jesus. Okay, so there are the points that you need to know on the first part. Right, next. Commander Jesus is in charge. He's arrogant, ruthless, dangerous, corrupt. A lot of brutality under the command of Commander Jesus. There's torture, murder, and mass graves. Arves, as we know, that's Patson's best friend, who has AIDS, is gravely ill, and the outlook is bleak. He is going to die. Patson's father is among the miners who are killed by Commander Jesus and his men. Patson must come to terms with life without his father. Patson is given the chance to run for freedom, but steps on a landmine and loses his leg. Now we know what happened. When Patson crept out to go and get Arb's medication, he peeped through the window at the farmhouse, and there he saw Sylvia entertaining Commander Jesus, and he threw a rock through the window because he was outraged by what he was witnessing. And in retaliation, and in order to achieve his revenge, Commander Jesus told Patson to run through the landmine field. And poor Patson lost his leg. Okay, Commander Jesus keeps looking for Patson. It seems he will never be free from persecution. In their quest to escape to South Africa, from Zimbabwe to South Africa, the men encounter many dangerous situations, including a deadly journey through the Kruger Park. Grace is kidnapped by the human trafficker. Okay, these are the difficulties that are faced. The novel shows people intent on enriching their own lives, ambitions, and well-being at the expense of their humanity. Again, there, is it that they are immoral, or is it a product of a corrupt, impoverished society? In the novel, family has a greater meaning than just blood related. This is important. Family also includes Boubacar. Boubacar takes on a supportive role as a close friend, but also substitute parent. The race to save Grace and their reunion shows the intensity of their love and devotion of a family. His intense desire to save his sister is an important part of Patson's acceptance of family responsibility. He takes on the duty of father. Okay, right, so that is Diamond Boy. Now, in the model essay that I did on Diamond Boy, it is in your little Diamond Boy booklet, which is on the platform, and I also covered it in one of the lessons. You can go through and check where I covered it. You will see that I've done a model essay on the development to maturity, Patson's journey, and in there I've included quotes. So I suggest you learn these points, but then you also learn 1 or 2 or 3 of my quotes and make sure that you use them. Another thing you can do is, if you don't learn your quotes, if you do the literary essay on Diamond Boy, just go to the contextual questions and in there find quotes and include them in your literary essay. It's always good if you have quotes. Okay, so even if you don't learn them, just go to the contextuals and just steal a few quotes from there. All right, so you've got quotes. And just know exactly how to quote. You include the quote in the flow of your sentence, or you make a point, you have a colon to show that you're introducing the quote, and then you introduce the quote, and you write it, and you put it in inverted commas. Okay, grade 12s, any questions? Give me a thumbs up if that's helped.
No questions, Mom.
Great. Okay. So do you feel more secure if you go and do a Diamond Boy essay? Okay, Diamond Boy is, I mean, it's such a lovely novel. And everything that they ask is related to exactly this. Okay, you can almost predict what's going to come up. It's going to be the journey. It's going to be the contrast between family, love, support, nurture, and the cruelty and the corruption. It's going to be something about ours, all right? And Boubacar is going to come in. It's going to be there. So just know those points. Okay, and then if you choose to do the essay on Pygmalion, all right, you have to follow the same structure. Okay, so let's read the topic. The story of Eliza Doolittle in Pygmalion shares certain aspects of the Cinderella fairy tale. Write a literary essay of 400 to 450 words and discuss to what extent you agree with the statement. Okay, now here you are being asked yes or no. I agree or I don't. So you have to qualify what you say. Okay, now interestingly enough, this is one of the possible essay topics that are in my notes. In my notes that I did on Pygmalion, I indicated that this is a possible essay topic. I never thought it would come up though. It assumes that you know the story of Cinderella, and not all people do. I mean, this is culturally a biased question because people in Africa are brought up on their own indigenous tales as opposed to the westernized stories of Cinderella and Snow White, those kind of stories. So it is a little bit of a culturally biased question, this. But nevertheless, those of you who did it, you knew exactly what you were doing, but again, your structure was flawed. So let's go. Exactly the same as what I did in Diamond Boy. In the play Pygmalion, George Bernard Shaw, if you forget that's his name, just remember Shaw. That's his surname. So in the play Pygmalion, and oh, I forgot to point out, I've put Pygmalion in italics to show it's a title. Just going back to the first one. Here I put Diamond Boy in inverted commas to show that it's a title. You can put it in inverted commas or you can underline it. Okay, it's not so easy to do italics when you're writing an exam. Okay, right, so Shaw portrays, you've got to learn these words, grade 12s. Portrays, suggests, conveys. Know those words, okay? Portrays, suggests, conveys. I've taught you suggest in your language papers. So the use of this word suggests, and then you think connotation. So here we've got portrays Eliza Doolittle as a character who transforms into a woman of self-respect and confidence. Although Cinderella marries a prince, she does not become self-reliant and independent. So there I've already shown that I don't really 100% agree with the topic, that there might be many similarities between Pygmalion and Cinderella. Okay, I've shown that Eliza transforms. Okay, remember the difference between changes and transforms. Changes is something superficial. You change your clothes, you change your way of speaking. But transformation happens at a far deeper level, where you become more self-assured, more confident, and you rely more on yourself, and you become independent. Okay, so she transforms into a woman of self-respect and confidence. Cinderella doesn't transform. She remains a flat character. She doesn't grow at all. The prince finds her and marries her. So she's not self-reliant. She's not opening her own business. She's not independent. She is dependent on the prince. And then again, we have our paragraphs. Again, try to follow the peel. Point, evidence from the play, explain, link to topic. This essay was more different. It was more difficult than the Diamond Boy. Right, in the conclusion, Shaw portrays Eliza as a woman who is determined to make her own decisions and support herself. By contrast, Cinderella is dependent on a man for her livelihood. It is suggested that Eliza achieves her dream and opens her own flower shop, thus becoming independent and self-reliant. So there I have asserted again that there are differences, that Eliza transforms, supports herself, but Cinderella never becomes self-reliant and independent. And I think most of you, the girls, young ladies who are in the class, you want to be independent, you want to be self-reliant, you want to make your own decisions. And the only way you can do that, as you know, is through education. So I salute you for being here. Right, let's look at the similarities. Eliza is a poor street beggar who sells flowers to anyone passing by. Her father only shows up when he realizes he can make money off his daughter. Her initial appearance as a flower girl is quite unattractive. She's dirty, shabbily dressed, and in need of a dentist. Cinderella starts as a poor orphan girl who's forced to live with her evil stepmothers and sisters. Eliza's life is turned around. She becomes a beautiful, articulate woman who fits in the most posh social class. All right? Cinderella also lifts up through the status ranks of society and marries a prince. But it's not because of her own determination. It's just because the prince fell in love with her at first sight, which makes it a fantasy story, a fairy tale. Right. Carrying on, she is graced with home, friends, clothes, etc. Higgins perfects her English dialect and teaches her the manners of a lady. Higgins may be seen as the evil stepmother who abuses Eliza. He makes her stay up late to practice, calls her a creature, a gutter snipe, etc. Like the heroine in the Cinderella story, she attends a ball where she is the most elegant woman there, becoming the talk of the ball. Okay, now that's exactly like Cinderella. Cinderella has the fairy godmother who turns her into this beautiful, elegant, sophisticated woman. Some of you wrote that Cinderella had the fairy godmother, and the fairy godmother, sorry, Aidan, I missed that. You wrote, let me quickly check what you wrote. Okay, people thought that Eliza was a duchess, yes. They thought she was a duchess, that she had the physical appearance of one, but she also spoke so poshly and it was such a dignified demeanor. Okay, so both of them become the talk of the ball. Not only does Eliza become physically beautiful, but she gains a sense of confidence. through her transformation. Okay, so it's not change. It's not only that she's learned how to speak, how to dress properly, that she needs to bath and look after her teeth. It's not just that. She grows in self-reliance and self-determination. Okay, right. Now, what are the differences? Eliza realizes that her fine speech and manners are acquired skills, nothing more. This point is vital, grade 12s. It's vital because it tells the difference between change and transformation. Eliza says after the ball that she can never be like those people, and she is sorry that she lost the bet. The irony is that in terms of her dress, in terms of her demeanor, in terms of her language skills, she is exactly like those people, but she feels she can never be fake, shallow, and superficial. And that's what she means when she says, I can never be like those people. And that is fantastic. That is amazing that she's able to recognize the shallowness of the class structure and say she can never be like them. She wants to be her own boss, make her own decisions. So this is a vital point. It's easy to learn manners. It's easy to learn how to dance. It's easy to change and have beautiful clothes. It's easy to learn how to speak. The transformation is more challenging, is far more difficult. The real transformation comes from being treated like a lady and from there gaining self-respect. Now, it was Pickering that treated her like a lady. And that's what Eliza says allowed her to transform. So for Higgins, she will always be a flower girl in the gutter because that's how he treats her. He treats her with disrespect and strips her of her dignity. By contrast, Pickering treats her like a lady. It didn't matter if she was in the gutter and selling flowers. He still treated her with respect and with kindness. And that, she said, allowed her to transform and become the self-assured, independent woman. Did you get that? Give me a thumbs up if you got that. It's vital, grade 12s. Okay, Gugu, thank you. Should I repeat it? Anybody want me to repeat it, or are you okay? I'm going to repeat it just in case, because I'm convinced it's going to come up. Okay, right. Change is easy. You can learn how to dance. You can learn to wear nice clothes. You can learn to speak properly. That's the easy part. And that is what Higgins and Mrs. Pierce taught her. That's the easy part. Change takes place in your soul, in the core of your being. So you are no longer lacking in confidence. You are no longer low in self-esteem. You have transformed into a woman who is self-assured and determined to make her own decisions and make her own stand in the world. So that's change and transformation. Now, it was Pickering that inspired Eliza to transform. Why? Higgins always treated her with disrespect. He always treated her impolitely, and he was dismissive of her. Whether she was in the gutter or whether she was a woman at a ball, he always treated her abysmally because he was arrogant, egocentric, self-centered, full of himself. Pickering, by contrast, when he met her at the beginning of the play, when she was the poor, shabbily dressed flower girl. Already then he treated her with kindness, respect, and politeness. So Higgins inspired her to have confidence and belief in herself. Pickering. Did I say Pickering or Higgins? I meant Pickering. Pickering inspired her to make a stand for herself. And those 2 points are vital in the play. Okay. The difference between Pickering and Higgins and how their behavior impacted on Eliza. Right. By the end of the play, Eliza emerges as a poised, independent woman who knows her own worth and intends to make her own way in the world. Now, this is different from the Cinderella story, where the play does not just stop after the heroine is swept off her feet by a prince and lives happily ever after, because Eliza realizes the value of real transformation. In response to Higgins' insensitive treatment, Eliza takes a stand for her self-worth and dignity and then leaves him. Okay, so when we're reading the play, I know quite a few of you watched the movie, which is great because it'll give you more understanding. When you answering in your matric exam, though, don't base your answers on the movie. Base them on the play. Eliza leaves at the end. She does not stay with Higgins. All right, and it is suggested that she marries Freddie. So she marries for true love. And she actually opens her own flower shop. So she does become the master of her own fate. Okay, she does not marry Higgins. I think Higgins secretly wanted her to stay, but he was too self-centered to understand and realize how abysmally and badly he had treated her. All right, so that's the difference between Cinderella and Eliza. Cinderella remains the flat character, dependent on the prince. Eliza has proved that she doesn't need to depend on anyone. And that is the real value of transformation. Grade 12s, any questions? None. I kind of feel certain that with the notes on the June exam literary essay and these notes on the prelim literary essays, that actually you'll be fine. But what you're okay, Al-Qaeda, great. But what you've got to remember is the structure. What your introduction should say and what your conclusion should say. So you start with, in the play or in the novel, okay, you name it, and then you say the playwright. I didn't include playwright there, I just said George Bernard Shaw. A person who writes a play is called a playwright. A person who writes a novel is called an author. But I just said George Bernard Shaw. And remember those words: portrays, conveys, suggests. Those are such useful words. So when you're thinking in the exam, what word can I use? Just remember those: portrays, suggests, and conveys. Very useful words. And then, of course, you think the connotation of what it is that you're saying. All right. So I feel that with this, you should be fine. The main point of Pygmalion is the transformation. And it looks at the difference between Higgins and Pickering. Yes, both Cinderella and Eliza freed themselves, yes, from what was imprisoning them. Thank you, Al-Qaeda. What was imprisoning Cinderella was being the maid, basically, in her stepmother and her stepsister's home. what freed Eliza was her determination. She was a powerful, powerful young woman. And right from the start, remember she said, I'm a good girl, I am. Right from the start, we could see that desire in her to improve herself, her ambition to go beyond the limits of the social class that she was in. Okay, so the play is also about social class. And that's one of the reasons why Shaw wrote the play, to show that social class is so shallow. And all you need to do is dress nicely and speak properly, and you can lift up into any class. But that is fake. That is shallow. It's not real, sincere transformation. Okay, the power of language also is important in Pygmalion, because language determines which class you're going to be in. But also sometimes language is vital because you need the vocabulary to express yourself. And when you learn language and you learn new words, it empowers you. And that's what Higgins gave to Eliza. But she always remained the bet. She was a bet. She was never a full human being with dignity who deserved respect and admiration. She was always just the gutter girl, and she was the bet. And he feels that he won the bet. But he never looked at Eliza, the woman. Eliza, her feelings, her interpretation of the events that took place. Any more comments, any more questions, grade 12s? All right, you're all okay. I'm going to go through the language paper on Monday and the language exam, but I'm happy to take any requests to do anything. Okay, so on Monday I did the poetry. I did 6 of the poems. On Monday I'm going to go through the past, the language paper, but I'm going to focus on the sections where you lost marks and do a full-on lesson of the possibilities of what can come up in the finals. But I'm happy to take any suggestions for any lessons. So anything you want me to do, let me know and I'll include it in one of our lessons. You basically have 2.5 weeks before your final exams. The final exams start on the 12th, but your exams only start the following week. So the first few exams, I don't think anybody here, I don't think you write those. So there is time for you to catch up and do brilliantly in these exams. Please, I urge you to be in all the lessons, to do the revision that has been developed for you. I've done a whole revision program for this 4th term. I've done past papers. They're already up on the platform. So I urge you to do them and be in all your lessons in all subjects. And I just know that you're going to fly through these exams and crack them. All right, my dear grade 12s, I'm so pleased that you took the time out on a public holiday to be here. Good for you. Well done. All right, enjoy your weekend. Don't forget your books, but do have a break. And I'll see you on Monday. Thank you, my dear grade 12s. Bye-bye.